By the time Nell Vero reached the warning sign, the rain had thinned into a mist so fine it seemed to hang in the air without falling. It gathered on her lashes, on the torn shoulder of her coat, on the paper bundle of stale bread tucked under one arm, and on the yellow letters nailed to a warped board at the edge of the tidal flats. Lowbell, 3 miles. No services, no ferry, no trespassing beyond tide mark. Salt had lifted the paint in scales. Moss filled the nail holes. A gull stood on the sign as if it had inherited the post after every human office had closed. Behind Nell, the mainland road bent between alder trees and vanished toward the crab sheds where she had slept the night before, until a man with a broom handle found her before dawn and called her a thief before checking whether anything was missing. He had not struck her. He had only kept the broom across the doorway while she gathered her sack and stepped out into the rain. In some places, that counted as mercy. She had walked all morning without choosing a direction. Roads chose well enough for people who could not afford choices. They carried one away from doors, away from questions, away from the kind of faces that saw a girl alone, and immediately began measuring what trouble she must be. By noon, the road had given up its hedges and come down to mud, seagrass, leaning stakes, and silver pools that reflected the sky in broken pieces. The woman at the filling station had said the town across the flats was finished. Nell had heard her through the open service window while pretending not to wait for thrown-away food. Lowbell's been abandoned for years, the woman had told a delivery driver. Storm took the wharf. Cannery shut. Last families left. Nothing there but rot and birds. The driver said he had once seen a light there. Fog does that, the woman said. Makes fools of men who want stories. Nell did not want a story. She wanted a roof, a corner, a place dry enough to sleep without folding herself around hunger. Empty towns were dangerous, but not in the same way living towns were. An empty house did not ask for an address. It did not look at a torn coat and decide guilt before evidence. She stepped past the sign. The tide was far out, exposing a causeway of packed shell and black mud that crossed the flats toward the island. Lowbell sat on the far side, its roofs pressed low beneath fog, its chimneys like burned fingers. Nell tested the first stretch with the broken handle of an umbrella she had found in a ditch. The shell pack held. She had taken only 8 steps when she saw the footprints. They came from the mud to her left, not from the road. They were not old. Rain had softened everything else into cups and scars, but these prints still had edges. Each heel was sharp in the gray silt. Each sole showed a crosshatch pattern and a crescent chip near the right instep. The person who made them had walked carefully, leaving long spaces between safe patches. Nell looked toward the mainland. Nothing moved but reeds. She looked toward the island. The fog gave nothing back. The footprints crossed the causeway at an angle, avoiding a glossy patch that looked no different from the rest, until Nell poked it with the umbrella handle. The handle slid down to the grip without touching bottom. She withdrew it slowly. Black mud clung to the metal ribs where the cloth had once been. Nell put her boot into the first footprint. The mud held. She stepped into the next, then the next, stretching when the unseen walker had stretched, keeping her breath shallow when the prints skirted places where water shone too green. Whoever had crossed before her knew the flats. They had stepped on hidden stone, packed shell, old boards furred with weed. A careless walker would have gone straight along the crown and vanished through the eaten parts. Far beyond the island, something low and mournful sounded once. It might have been a ship horn, or wind through a pipe, or an animal hidden by fog. Nell stopped with one foot half raised. The sound did not come again. She told herself not to invent company. The footprints climbed between 2 stone posts, where rusted chains lay in heaps. A board hung by one hinge. Tide road unsafe after half flood, it said in letters nearly gone. Walkers sound line before crossing. Nell did not know what line a walker was meant to sound. No bell rope hung there. No wire crossed the road. The footprints ignored the sign and entered Lowbell through a street paved with crushed mussel shell. The town had the silence of a place built for noise. Houses stood shoulder to shoulder, each with a porch, each with hooks, where nets or laundry had once hung, each with windows facing the street, as if still expecting neighbors. But no smoke rose, no dog barked. Shop fronts were shuttered with swollen boards. A cracked barber pole leaned in a doorway like something the sea had chewed and returned. Nell's steps sounded too loud. The prince crossed the street under the awning of a fishbroker's office, where wet mud marked the dry planks clearly. Whoever it was had come through since the rain began, perhaps that morning, perhaps an hour before. The prince paused before a shutter pried open just wide enough for a face to look through. Nell did not look inside. Windows invited a person to imagine eyes. The prince continued past a bakery, past a chapel whose steeple leaned inland, past a public pump wired shut. Its basin held rainwater under a green skin. Nell was thirsty enough to consider it, and experienced enough not to. At the square, 3 streets met. One climbed toward the pines. One ran downhill toward the drowned wharf. The third ended at a low brick building with narrow windows and a slate roof. Above the door, missing metal letters had left rust stains. A few still clung in place. Tide House. The footprints crossed the threshold. The door was swollen, not locked. Nell put her shoulder to it and felt it scrape over grit. Inside, the air smelled of rope, cold ash, and old salt. Narrow windows admitted a gray light filmed with white crust. A counter ran along one wall beneath varnished maps. The maps were not of streets, but of water. Channels braided around Lowbell, marked with arrows, depths, warnings, and names that sounded older than the town. Grave Hook, Little Throat, East Teeth, Bell Cut. A strip of newer paper had been pasted across one corner. When the bell is gone, keep the lung. Nell frowned and touched the words. Someone had brushed dust away from them recently. The clean streaks showed where fingers had followed a route from the shoals to the harbor. The footprints ended beneath the map trough. No, not ended. They became smears. Knees had pressed into dust there. Hands had gripped the wood. Nell crouched and saw a plank with a leather loop tucked flat in a crack. She looked over her shoulder at the empty room. "Hello?" she said. Her voice sounded too young. She hated that. The Tide House answered only with the creak of slate and the working of hidden water somewhere below. She pulled the loop. The plank lifted on old hinges, releasing a breath of colder air, clean with metal and wet stone. Stairs descended into darkness. A rope handrail ran along one side, newly frayed where hands had passed. Nell should have left. A hidden stair in an abandoned town belonged to whoever had kept it hidden. Afraid people were sometimes worse than cruel ones. Then the low, mournful sound came again from beyond the island. Longer this time, thinning into the fog like breath across a bottle. She took the umbrella handle in one hand and went down. The stair turned twice before reaching a passage tall enough to stand in. The walls were damp brick, glazed black, salted white at the mortar. A slate sign hung at the bottom. Lowbell Tide Lung. Walk soft. Count valves. Leave air for the next hand. Nell read it twice. The words did not explain themselves, but they had the tone of instructions. And instructions meant someone had once expected a frightened person to need them. The passage opened into a chamber larger than the building above. Brick arches sweated moisture. A black channel of seawater ran through the center, caged by iron grills. In the channel, a wheel as tall as a wagon turned slowly, with the last of the outgoing tide. Its paddles lifted water and let it fall with a patient slap. Belts ran from the wheel to shafts overhead, then to pumps fixed to the wall. Leather cups rose and fell inside cloudy glass cylinders. With every stroke, air whispered through pipes into 3 riveted tanks lying in cradles like sleeping animals. The town above was dead, but this room was working. Not well. One belt hopped on its pulley. One pump struck late. A gauge needle trembled below a red mark. Water leaked from a seam and tapped into a bucket already half full. Still, the system moved. Tide drove wheel, wheel drove pumps, pumps filled tanks, and pipes climbed toward the town, the wharf, and the white world beyond. A chalkboard hung beside the tanks. The last line had been written hard enough to break the chalk. North Reed sticking. Kelp in lower race. Lens blind with salt. No horn below 20. Bell line unreliable. Cross only on falling tide. Beside the board hung an oilskin coat too small for most adults. Beneath it stood a pair of boots. Nell looked down at the wet prints on the floor. Crosshatch sole, crescent chip near the right instep. She did not touch them. A scraping sound came from a passage to the right, followed by a soft curse. Nell gripped the umbrella handle. "I'm not stealing." Silence. Then a voice answered from beyond the tanks. "That would make one of us." A figure appeared, bent nearly double, one hand on the wall, the other pressed against her ribs. She wore patched trousers, a salt-stiff sweater, and only one boot. Her other foot was wrapped in cloth darkened by seawater. Her hair had been cut close to the jaw without care for straightness. She was perhaps 19, perhaps younger. Her face was gray with exhaustion, but her eyes were sharp and annoyed, as if finding a stranger underground was just one more repair she did not have time for. "You drank the Monday water," the girl said. Nell glanced at the shelf and saw a jar labeled "Rain, boiled on Monday." "Some." "Good. Then you can pull." The girl took 2 more steps and nearly fell. Nell caught her by the shoulder before deciding to. "Let go," the girl said, while leaning most of her weight into Nell's hands. "I will when you stand." "I'm standing." "Barely." The girl looked at her. "Name?" "Nell." "Roe Holden. Don't ask what Roe is short for." "I wasn't." "Good." "Lower race is jammed. If the wheel stops before the tide turns, the horn won't charge. If the horn doesn't charge, anything outside Bellcut may follow the loose buoy and find East Teeth." Nell stared at her. "Boats," Roe said. "Fog lies. This place corrects it. There aren't supposed to be boats. There aren't supposed to be girls following my prints either." Nell thought of the filling station woman saying Lowbell was finished. She thought of the horn in the fog and the gauge below red. "You made those prints." "Yesterday evening. Crossed on a falling tide. Cleared the lens. Cut half the weed out. Slipped in the race. Lost one boot and gained a foot that complains. Now the wheel's binding again because the sea is generous with trouble." "You live here?" "No one lives here." It was the kind of answer people gave when truth had too many hooks. The wheel shuddered. One paddle failed to rise. Water struck it with a heavy slap. The gauge needle dipped. Roe pointed toward the right passage. "Service grate is below the west steps. There's a rake. Hook weed. Cut rope. Keep your hands outside the bars. I can't put weight on this foot." "No," Nell said. Roe blinked. "No?" "No to putting myself under a wheel in a hidden cellar with someone I don't know." Roe's expression changed, becoming more careful. "Fair. Then go up before the tide covers the road. Stay to the prints. Don't step where the mud shines green. Don't use the chapel porch. It drops." Nell did not move. Above them, the horn tried to sound again. It broke halfway through. as if a throat had closed on itself. Ro closed her eyes. "That was ours," she said. "If it can't answer the buoy, a boat in fog can turn too soon. East teeth will open it like a tin." Nell wanted to say she knew no boats. She owed no boats. Owing the world in general had never left her with anything specific enough to hold. But she saw Ro's wrapped foot, the wiped gauge, the careful jar labeled Monday, the chalk written by a hand that had expected to come back. Someone had crossed mud and tide not because the place was safe, but because the coast still asked something of it. "Why doesn't somebody official fix it?" Nell asked. Ro laughed once, bitter and short. "Because every paper says Lowbell is dead. Tell the harbor office a dead town is still warning boats, and they send a lock before they send a gasket." The wheel shuddered again. Nell took the bone-handled knife from the shelf. "Show me the grate." Ro did not thank her. Nell liked that. They went through the right-hand passage, Ro leaning on the wall, Nell carrying the knife, a coil of tarred cord, and a lantern Ro lit one-handed. The passage sloped beneath the street. Water sounded louder. At the end, stone steps descended to an iron platform above fast-moving water. The tide race narrowed there through a masonry throat. Kelp had gathered in dark ropes around the wheel axle, braided with crab line and broken net. Each surge pulled the mass tight. Each retreat loosened it just enough to let the wheel jerk another inch. Ro tied the cord around Nell's waist and fixed the other end to a ring. "Do not put your hand through the grate. Do not lean past your ribs. Do not trust the pause between surges. You've done this before." I had 2 boots then. Nell lay on the platform boards, cold soaked through her coat at once. She reached the rake through the bars, hooked weed, and pulled. The tangle resisted, then tore free so suddenly her elbow struck iron. Pain flashed. She swallowed it and dragged the weed up through the service gap. It landed like wet rope, foul and green. "Again," Ro said. Nell worked until her fingers numbed. The water slapped spray into her face. Twice the pull nearly took the rake. Once the wheel lurched, and a paddle passed the gap with enough force to make the platform tremble. Ro caught the back of Nell's coat and held her until the surge passed. The last tangle would not come free. A tarred crab line had wrapped around the axle. Nell set the rake aside, took the knife, and sawed at the line only when the water sucked back. The blade slipped. Salt entered a crack in her knuckle and burned. The world narrowed to rope, iron, black water, and Ro's lantern flame. The line parted. The wheel spun half a turn at once. Water punched through the race. Nell rolled back, clutching the knife as the tangle vanished downstream in pieces. Overhead, belts began moving faster. Air rushed through the pipes with a fuller sound. Then a sharp hiss cut through the chamber. Ro swore. "East tank." They climbed back to find air wasting from a pipe joint where old packing had split and lifted in a wet curl. The gauge climbed to 12, trembled, fell back. Pump gave. Leak stole. "What stops air?" Nell asked. "Good packing, dry hands, a merciful world. We have grease, sailcloth, leather, and a clamping strap." A drawer labeled hands held rags, a strap, a square of leather, and a card with block letter instructions. Nell read them once, then climbed onto a crate beside the hissing joint. The air struck cold against her fingers. She wrapped greased sailcloth with the thread, pressed leather over the split, and tightened the strap screw with the knife tip while Ro listened. "Not too hard," Ro said. "Listen for pitch." The hiss sharpened, then dulled. The gauge steadied at 13. "Enough. How high does it need?" 20 for a clean horn, 18 for an ugly warning, 15 for a cough that worries gulls. "Can we pump by hand?" Ro nodded toward 2 long levers folded against the far wall. "Bellows arms. 2 people, 10 minutes, 1 point if nothing leaks, and neither person hates living. They pumped. The mechanism resisted, then yielded into rhythm. Down with shoulder, up with knees, down as the other lever rose. After 3 minutes, Nell's arms burned. After 7, sweat ran under her damp collar. The chamber filled with work sounds, wheel, rods, bellows, leak whisper, Rose breathing, Nell's breath scraping thin. At 16, a cracked note rang overhead. Ro looked up. Bell line caught. Or a gull sat on it. We accept encouragement from uncertain sources. At 18, Ro opened the horn valve. The sound that came from Lowbell was deep, ragged, and close. It moved through the chamber, through Nell's ribs, through the soles of her boots. It climbed into the town and out over the fog. It did not sing. It warned. After 3 seconds, it broke into a cough. Ro shut the valve. Again in 2 minutes. Nell let her arms hang. That was it. That was one word. Fog needs sentences. A footstep sounded above. Both girls froze. Someone crossed the floor of the tight house. Weight pressed on the hatch. Gray light opened down the stair. "Ro?" a man called. Ro lowered the knife she had somehow taken from Nell's hand. "You're late, Knack." The man descended carrying a satchel and a coil of rope. He was broad-shouldered, bearded, perhaps 30, rain shining on his oilskin. His eyes moved from Ro to Nell to the patched tank. "Who's that?" "Hands," Ro said. "I can see she has hands." "Useful then." Nell lifted her chin. "I followed footprints." Knack looked at Ro. "You crossed leaving prints?" "I was concentrating on not drowning." "The whole mainland could follow you." "The whole mainland thinks Lowbell eats children and finds trespassers." "It might start if we invite them." Ro pointed to the gauge. "Kelp cleared halfway. East joint patched. North reed sticking. Lens blind. Buoy loose. We need the lamp." Knack's suspicion vanished into work. "A skiff left Plover Dock before noon. Could be the clinic boat. They'll try the inner water if the fog thickens." Ro looked at Nell. "Still want to leave?" Nell imagined the causeway, each footprint filling with water. "Can I?" "Not safely," Knack said. "Tide's over the weak parts now." The trap had closed without a door. Panic rose and found no use. Nell held the greasy rag tighter and said, "Tell me what to do." They climbed the lens stair, Knack first with the satchel, Ro using the rail, Nell last with a bucket of rainwater. The stair rose through brick into timber. Wind pressed through cracks. The watchroom above the wharf was built of thick panes set in iron ribs. Half were crusted white with salt. 2 were cracked. 1 had been replaced by oiled canvas tied hard against weather. At the center stood the lamp lens, curved panes around a small housing, severe and beautiful in the gray light. A plate at its base read, "Lowbell cut lamp. Keep flame small, glass clean, signal true." Nell read the words and imagined all the hands that had obeyed them. Knack opened the satchel. The chimney was cracked. The spare had broken the previous winter. Ro muttered that intentions were poor glass. Nell looked at the oiled canvas over the broken pane. "Use that as a draft patch," she said. "Not for the chimney, around the housing, where wind gets in." Knack studied her a second, then nodded. "Cut me a strip." They worked quickly. Ro cleaned the lens with vinegar and rainwater, while Nell wiped each pane clear. Knack braced the cracked chimney with wire and tied the canvas baffle against the draft. The lamp caught on the 3rd match. Its flame leaned, fluttered, steadied. Ro opened the shutter toward Bellcut. The fog outside brightened, not clearing, but receiving a pale wound. The beam did not reach far. It marked direction. It told anyone searching the gray that 1 point belonged to human hands. From below, the horn sounded short and rough. The floor shivered. Then Nell heard another sound beneath wind and horn. A small engine, uneven, somewhere beyond the wharf. Knack turned his head. Roe whispered, "Too far east." They descended through a covered passage into the chapel, where the cracked bell hung in a leaning tower. A rope from Knack's coil went to the clapper. Roe explained the patterns. 2 long, 3 short for bell cut open, 4 hard for keep off east teeth. "What's east teeth?" Nell asked. Knack pointed into fog. "Rocks that wait until you believe in water." The engine faded, returned, then faded again. Fog took direction away from sound. Knack rang 2 long and 3 short. The cracked notes rolled out raw and carrying. The engine seemed to change, then grew louder in a way that felt wrong, too certain. "4 hard," Rose said. Knack rang. 4 hard. Again. Below them, metal struck metal. Once, twice. Not the bell, not the wheel. Something heavier and lower. Rose's face tightened. "Lower race gate." "What about it?" Nell asked. "If kelp caught the gate chain, the flood will hit it half open when the tide turns. Wheel could overspeed or lock backward. We lose the pumps." "What fixes it?" Roe looked at her, and Nell hated the answer before it came. "West steps. Below the platform. Manual dog. High handle releases the catch. Low handle drops the gate clean. Lantern above you. Cord at your waist. Don't go if water is over the 3rd rung. If it rises, climb. If the wheel screams, flatten to the wall. If you drop the lantern, leave it." Knack stopped ringing. "No." "Then who?" Rose snapped. "You're needed on bell. I'm 1-footed." "I'll look," Nell said. "Looking isn't dying." Rose's voice sharpened. "That is exactly what looking becomes when people say it that way." Nell turned toward her. "I followed your prints over mud that could swallow me because they were the only honest thing I'd seen all day. If this place has instructions, give them." Rose's anger faltered. Under it was fear and the exhaustion of having been responsible too long for something too large. "Scared listens," she said. "Stay scared." Nell ran. At the west steps, the tide had gone slack, gathering itself to return. The water lay below the 2nd rung. Nell tied the cord to her waist and climbed down backward beside the gate housing. The iron bars were slick. The lantern swung above her. The high handle shifted half an inch and stuck. She scraped rust with the knife, braced her shoulder against stone, and kicked it with her heel until something inside clanked. The tide began to move inland. "Not yet," she whispered, as if water negotiated. The high handle released. The gate dropped 6 inches with a boom that shook the rungs. Water surged through. Nell flattened to the wall. The wheel above turned hard, then caught. The low handle sat deeper, half in shadow. The water reached her calves. She climbed 1 rung lower. It reached her knees. The cord floated and snapped taut. She caught the low handle but could not move it. She thought of Rose's warning not to save iron at the price of bone. She also thought of the prints across the mud, set down by someone who had saved her before knowing she existed. She put both hands on the handle, lifted her feet from the rung, and let her weight hang. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the handle dropped. The gate fell clean. Water struck it and rose white. Nell's boots flew sideways. The cord caught her so hard the breath left her. She slammed shoulder first into stone, missed 1 rung, caught the next, and held, while water battered her legs. Above, the wheel found its flood direction. It slowed, steadied, and turned with a new rhythm. Nell climbed. Each rung took more will than strength. When she rolled onto the platform, she lay with her cheek against wet iron and felt the machinery change through her bones. The tide lung inhaled. In the main chamber, Knack had returned with Roe under one arm. The gauge climbed. 17. 18. Nell's trousers dripped around her boots. Her shoulder throbbed. Roe looked at her in a way that was not gratitude and not command, but recognition sharpened by fear. "You went below the third rung," Roe said. The third rung was optimistic. "Pump bellows," Roe said. Nell groaned. They pumped. Knack strong and even. Nell opposite him, Roe at the horn valve. The gauge rose to 20. Roe opened the valve. The horn spoke. This time it held. Lowbell's warning rolled over the abandoned streets, through the cracked bell tower, across the wharf, and into the fog. It was not a ghost sound. It was made of effort. Nell in the race, Roe crossing with one boot, Knack carrying rope through rain, and unnamed hands that had built the tanks, cut the maps, labeled the drawers, and taught a dead town to remain useful. The engine outside changed pitch sharply. Knack ran up to the watchroom. Roe sounded a second blast, then a third on the count marked by the valve. Nell leaned on the bellows lever and tried not to fall. Minutes stretched. The horn answered the loose buoy. The bell rang from above. The lamp burned in the watchroom. Fog pressed against Lowbell and could not make it empty. At last, from outside, came 3 quick blasts from a small boat whistle. Roe's knees softened. "Bellcut," she whispered. "They're in Bellcut." They climbed to the watchroom because Knack shouted for them. From the glass, Nell saw the boat appear in pieces. A yellow bow light, the dark lift of a hull, a figure at the stern, then the whole small skiff sliding through fog inside the lamp's line. Someone aboard lifted an arm. Knack opened a pane. "Hold west, west, then north." The skiff turned where the map said it should. A minute later, it was only sound. Then not even that. Roe leaned her forehead against the glass. "Clinic colors," she said. "Someone needed the short water." Nell sank to the floorboards. Now that the work stopped, cold took possession of her clothes. Her hands shook too hard to hide. Knack looked at her. "There are blankets below." "Of course there are," Nell said. "This dead town is better stocked than most living ones." Roe laughed once and winced. "Don't compliment it. It gets proud." They stayed underground while the tide covered the road. Knack lit a small fire in the iron stove, just enough to push the cold back. He gave Nell a blanket from a cedar chest labeled Storm Hands. Inside were socks darned at the heels, 2 caps, tins of hard biscuit, and packets sealed against damp. Not abundance, preparation. Nell ate 1 biscuit slowly, though her body wanted to swallow without chewing. Roe watched from a bench, foot propped on rope. "You can eat another," Roe said. "I know." "Do you?" "I know better than to eat like I'm dying when I'm trying not to." Roe nodded as if accepting a credential. When the gauge steadied and the horn rested, Nell asked, "Why hide it?" Roe leaned back against the brick, because it was easier than explaining. "That's not an answer." "It's most answers eventually." Knack rubbed grease from his hands. Lowbell had an official fog bell once. Harbor Board kept the buoy, charted the channel. Then the shoal shifted after the big storm. The board said the harbor was finished, took the good bell, left the cracked one, marked Lowbell unsuitable for landing. Cannery closed. Families moved if they could. Some still fished the back cuts, because water doesn't read closures. Roe nodded toward the maps. Eastteeth wasn't on their charts right. Bellcut opened narrow but deep. People knew small boats could come through if there was sound and a lamp. So they made the tide lung out of cannery compressors, tide gear, and whatever the board didn't bother hauling away. "Who made it?" "Net menders," Knack said. "Pump men. 2 sisters from the salt house. A teacher who drew better maps than the surveyor. My grandmother's uncle built the reed chest. Roe's mother kept the root plates until she left. Ro looked into the stove flame. She didn't leave because she wanted to. Nell heard a door in that sentence and did not push it. For years, Knack said, people crossed when fog came. Sound the horn, light the cut, guide whoever was in trouble. Then fewer boats knew the pattern. More houses fell. Mainland liked Lowbell better as a ghost than as a chore. And you two do it now? Knack when he can, Ro said. Me when he's late. I'm late because I have a job that pays money. You're late because the living world has poor priorities. Nell looked at the chalkboard, the drawers, the route maps. My steps stayed inside yours on the flats. Ro glanced at her. The mud looked the same everywhere, Nell said. Your prints were the only path. They were an accident. Nell thought of all the accidents that had kept her alive. Bread burned and thrown out, a laundromat bathroom left unlocked, a back gate that did not squeal. Accident did not mean unimportant. The night became machinery and tasks. Every 20 minutes, Ro checked the gauge. Every half hour, Knack climbed to trim the lamp. Nell learned to wipe condensation from the tank glass, listen for a leaking reed, read the tide pointer as it moved from slack to flood. Her body wanted sleep, but each task opened another piece of the place. A shelf of signal flags wrapped in waxed cloth, a speaking tube that worked if one shouted and did not mind tasting dust, a cupboard of route plates stamped for different fogs, low drift, hard wall, rain fog, smoke fog, night fog. Lowbell had not treated weather as a mood. It had named weather by what it did to people trying to cross water. Near midnight, the fog thinned enough for the lamp to be shut. Nell slept on a bench by the stove and dreamed of walking across mud in another person's footprints while the sea copied each step behind her. Morning showed Lowbell without mercy. Roofs sagged. Paint hung in strips. Seagrass grew from gutters. The square lay flooded ankle-deep, reflecting broken windows and the leaning bell tower. Beyond the street, the causeway was hidden except for marker stones. A medical woman arrived by skiff with a black bag and rubber boots. Her name was Dr. Elian Soar. She had been on the boat they guided through Bell Cut. The patient aboard, she said, was alive because they had used the inner water instead of turning back. She shook Nell's hand. Then I owe you my hull and somebody else's breath. Nell did not know what to do with thanks that sounded like a record being made. She only nodded. While the doctor cleaned Ro's foot, Knack took Nell to the edge of the causeway. The falling tide had begun to reveal the route in layers. Nell saw now what hunger and rain had hidden from her the day before. Small piles of white shell, stakes wrapped with tarred twine, chips cut into stone posts. Ro's footprints had been the freshest part of an older language. Knack handed Nell a basket of shell pieces. We set back what the storm took. At each marker, he showed her how the pale side faced safe ground, how broken edges pointed away from mud that swallowed weight, how 3 shells meant the old path had shifted and walkers should look for the next stake before trusting their feet. The marks were not secret exactly. They were simply not written for people moving fast. At the first firm step, Ro's softened print remained. Nell's own boot mark lay inside it, smaller and turned slightly outward. Seeing them together gave her an odd feeling. Not pride. Proof, perhaps. Proof that she had entered a place people called empty and had not remained only a trespasser. The doctor sent word to the mainland. By afternoon, 2 harbormen and an inspector named Lyle Dorn crossed with clean boots that dirtied within 10 steps. They asked why an unauthorized warning signal had been operated from a condemned structure. Ro asked whether they preferred authorized drowning. Knack coughed into his hand. Nell stood behind the tide house counter and said nothing, watching their eyes move over the tanks, maps, and working wheel. Not to wonder, to ownership to blame. But Dr. Sore had brought the story of the clinic boat, and the horn had left witnesses on both shores. The men did not bring locks. Over the next days, work replaced argument because the system allowed no other order. The east joint had to be repacked. The bell cable had to be replaced through 3 pulleys in the chapel tower. The lamp glass needed vinegar, rags, and patience. The lower race grate had to be hammered straight between movements of the wheel. Ro could not climb, so she taught from below with a broom handle across her knees and an expression that made every careless hand reconsider itself. Nell learned the tied lung in pieces. She learned how to feather the wheel during a hard flood so the bearings would not shatter. She learned how to warm a reed case with a wrapped brick before opening it in cold fog, how to smell the difference between stale bilge and a backed drain, how to mark a fresh, safe step without making it look inviting to fools. She learned that Lowbell's abandonment had been less a single event than a long argument lost by tired people. First cannery, then school, then official bell, then post, then maps printed without the harbor name, then children daring each other through the ghost town, then even the dares ending. But systems had stubborn memories. Water still moved through the race, air still compressed in tanks. A lamp became useful again when cleaned. A path existed if feet renewed it. The past revealed itself in work, not confession. Behind the reed chest, Nell found names burned into a wooden panel so damp would not lift them. Orla Keen, map hand. Vester Knoll, pump fit. Sarah Dim, lamp. Holden twins, race. Mother Pell, storm food. Cross no tide for pride. Each name had a mark beside it. Shell, hook, flame, hand. In a cabinet under the maps, she found children's slates covered with practice signals. 2 long, 3 short. 4 hard. 1 long, 1 short. 1 long. On one slate, a teacher had written, "The town is not the houses only. The town is also what we keep working for each other." Nell closed the slate away quickly. She did not like being moved by words found in cabinets. Words had failed many people with better claims than hers. Yet later, while greasing the bell pulley, the line returned. If a town was also what people kept working, then Lowbell had not been empty when she entered it. It had been thinly held, nearly dropped, waiting for hands. On the 5th day, the weather turned bright and sharp. The mainland appeared close enough to touch. Nell could have crossed after breakfast. The path was marked better now. Her clothes were dry. Knack had found boots from the storm chest that nearly fit with 2 pairs of socks. Dr. Sore had left a paper with a shelter address. A real one, she said, not a basement that closed after prayer. Nell put the paper in her pocket and spent the morning scrubbing the stone sink instead of deciding. Ro watched from the bench, foot propped. "You're scouring that basin like it insulted your family." The basin was foul. The basin has been foul since before your grandparents made questionable choices. I don't know my grandparents. Then it insulted someone else's. Nell rinsed the rag. "Do you want me to leave?" Ro looked genuinely surprised. "No." The answer came so quickly that Nell had no time to prepare for it. Ro looked embarrassed by her own honesty and added, "You fit in small places. You don't panic loudly, and Knack listens if you tell him something sounds wrong because he isn't already annoyed with you by habit." "We're not related," Knack called from the reed room. "By habit," Ro shouted back. Nell kept her eyes on the basin. "I'm not from here. Neither was half the machinery." "That's different." "Is it?" Nell had no answer she trusted. That afternoon, they tested the horn in clear light. Knack stood on the wharf with a flag. Dr. Sore held her skiff outside Bell Cut. Lyle Dorn watched the gauge with a pencil ready. Nell stood at the horn valve because Ro told her to, and because no one objected fast enough. "On the count," Ro said. The chamber held its breath. Nell opened the valve. The horn sounded clean. Not pretty. Clean. It went out over bright water, struck the shoals, and returned faintly changed. Dr. Soar raised an arm from the skiff. Knack's flag dipped once. The bell did not rattle by accident. The gauge fell exactly as the card said it should. Nell shut the valve. For a moment, everyone listened to the absence after. It was not silence. It was readiness. Lyle Dorn removed his hat. "The county chart is wrong," Rowe snorted. "Paper has confessed." "The channel should be remarked." "The channel has been marked," Knack said. "You stopped reading the marks." Dorn did not argue. He looked at Nell. "You crossed on footprints." "Yes." "Would you show me where?" Nell looked toward the open door, the square, and the pale road of mud beyond. 5 days earlier, she had borrowed the certainty of someone else's steps. Now, men with clipboards wanted her to translate the ground. She went. At half ebb, she showed them the false shine of soft mud, the safe stone left of the green water, the place where Rowe's tired right boot had pressed deeper, but still held, the line between a pole notch and the chapel louver. Dorn stared from mud to pole to chapel. "Who taught you that?" Nell almost said no one. Then she looked at Rowe. "Footprints," she said. By evening, the mainland sign had been replaced. It no longer sounded like a threat. Lowbell Tide Road. Cross only on falling water. Follow shells. Sound horn house if lost. Nell painted the letters herself with black paint that stung her nose. Her schooling had been irregular, interrupted by moves and adults who misplaced responsibility. But she knew the value of words that kept a person from stepping into mud. At sunset, Rowe brought out a small wooden tray from the tide house. It held oval shell tokens, washed clean, each drilled for a cord. Some had names scratched faintly on them. "Storm hands carried these," Rowe said. "Not medals, not keys. More like proof you knew which end of the horn was dangerous." "I don't need proof." "I didn't say you needed it." Rowe placed one blank token on the counter with a narrow file. "Mark your own. That way, no one spells you wrong." Nell scratched N first. The shell resisted, then accepted the cut. E came uneven. The 2 L's were better. She did not write Vero. Not yet. Just Nell. 4 letters deep enough to survive handling. She hung it on an empty hook between 17 and 19. There was no 18. "What happened there?" she asked. Knack answered quietly. "Tovan Greel. Lost in the race before I was born. Tried to clear storm wreckage alone." "Why keep the space?" Rowe's voice softened. "So the count limps where it should." Nell touched her new token once and stepped back. That night no fog came. They ate beans warmed on the stove and hard bread softened with rainwater. Dorn and the harbor man slept above, discovering official coats did not keep out Lowbell damp any better than stolen ones. Rowe fell asleep before pretending she meant to. Knack climbed to check the lamp and did not return for an hour. Nell sat awake in the tide lung, listening. She could now tell the difference between the wheel and the pumps, between a leak and a valve whisper, between the bell cable shifting and a rat in the wall. The place had not become less strange. It had become strange in detail. That was better. Fear liked blur. Work made edges. Near midnight, she climbed to the street. Lowbell under stars looked neither dead nor alive. It looked exposed. Pools in the square held trembling constellations. The sea breathed beyond the wharf. On the far mud, the day's footprints had begun to soften under the first reach of tide. She tried to imagine the girl she had been when she arrived. Hungry, wet, angry in the exhausted way that no longer has flames, measuring every doorway by danger. She was still that girl. Nothing so simple had been repaired. But she was also the girl who had cleared the race, dropped the gate, cleaned the reed, sounded the horn, marked the causeway, and scratched her name into shell. Those facts did not erase the others. They stood beside them like new markers on old mud. Behind her, Ro said, "Planning to walk out at high tide?" Bold. Stupid, but bold. Nell turned. Ro stood with a broom handle under one arm and a blanket around her shoulders. "I was looking. Dangerous habit. You do it. I'm a bad example with local knowledge." They stood together by the posts. The night smelled of salt and drying weed. "My mother used to say Lowbell wasn't abandoned," Ro said. "It was underattended." That sounds like something a person says when they want a ruin to forgive them. It might be. Ro looked toward the tide house. It might still be true. On the mainland, a faint light moved along the road and vanished behind trees. "I don't know how to stay," Nell said. Ro did not answer with comfort. That was one reason Nell trusted her. Most people don't. They just learn what needs doing at breakfast. "What if I leave wrong?" "Then you come back better, or you don't. The horn still needs cleaning." Nell laughed quietly. The tide crept higher over the causeway. Water entered the old footprints and made small mirrors of them. For a few minutes, each print held a piece of sky before the rising water joined them and took the shapes away. In the morning, Nell woke before anyone called her. She went to the hands drawer, took a clean rag, the grease tin, the inspection card for the east tank, and the stub of chalk. She checked the patch, found no hiss, wiped condensation from the gauge, and wrote the pressure down with the date Dr. Soar had given her. Her handwriting looked thin under the older entries, but it was legible. Then she climbed to the tide house and opened the door to gulls, pale sun, and wet roofs. The town stood around her with all its damage visible. It did not pretend to be safe. It did not pretend to be whole. It offered no welcome except work, and no promise except that work mattered when weather turned. At the causeway, people from the mainland were gathering. Knack with lumber on one shoulder, Dorn with a toolbox, Dr. Soar carrying coffee in a dented pot, and two strangers who waited as carefully as if entering a church. No one crossed until the shell markers showed. Ro came to stand beside Nell, one boot unlaced around bandages, broom handle in hand. "You made the morning entry?" she asked. "Yes." "Pressure?" 22 and holding. "East patch?" "No hiss." "Bell cable?" "Still ugly." "Ugly works." "I know." The tide drew back from the shell road. The first safe stones appeared. On the far side, Knack raised one arm. Nell stepped down from the tide house threshold and walked toward the posts. She did not follow Ro's prints this time. She placed her own beside the shells, firm and visible in wet silt. Not because anyone should trust them blindly, but because a path began by showing where one body had crossed and survived. Halfway to the first marker, she looked back. Lowbell watched with broken windows and a working horn. Above the tide house door, the remaining metal letters caught the light. Below them, Ro lifted 2 fingers, in a gesture too casual to be a salute and too deliberate to be nothing. Nell turned forward again. The mainland people waited. The mud accepted her next step. The old town, abandoned for years in every story people preferred, breathed behind her through tanks, pipes, reeds, and a wheel moved by the tide. It was not alive in the way lonely minds invented life. It was functional, damaged, demanding, and real. That was enough. By noon, more footprints crossed the flats. Some were heavy, some cautious, some foolish until corrected. Nell walked the line twice, resetting shells where boots kicked them aside. She showed Dorn the false shine of soft mud. She told Dr. Soar where the chapel porch would drop a person through. She helped Knack carry lumber and refused the upper pulley ladder until he found one with all its rungs. She argued with Roe about whether the South Reed needed warming before sunset, and lost, because Roe was right. In late afternoon, fog returned in a thin white seam beyond East Teeth. No boat called, no engine wandered. Still, Nell checked the lamp. She cleaned the glass until the beam would have a true path if needed. She stood at the valve, while Roe listened at the reed chest, and Knack watched the gauge. When the count came, Nell opened the horn for one test blast. Lowbell sounded across the water. The note went out whole and came back softened by distance. It moved over the causeway, over the new sign, over the footprints drying in the silt. On the mainland, people paused to listen. Some would still call the town abandoned. Some would call it dangerous. Some would call it a problem, now that it could no longer be ignored. Nell had been called all those things too, and had continued breathing. She closed the valve at Roe's signal. The chamber settled. The gauge held. The wheel turned. Work waited in every corner, but not all waiting was hunger, and not all walls were traps. That evening, when the others were busy above, Nell took her shell token from its hook and scratched one more mark beneath her name. A small crescent chip, like the missing bite in Roe's right boot sole, like the first print she had trusted on the mud. Not an emblem anyone else needed to understand. A reminder that she had entered by following another person's mark and stayed by making her own. She hung the token back between 17 and 19. Outside, the tide rose over the causeway and erased the day's prints. Under the town, the old lung kept breathing. In the tide house, Nell slept with the storm room door barred from the inside, not because she feared the people below, but because safety, when it was real, allowed a person to choose the shape of her rest. Before dawn, a horn from the outer buoy groaned once in the dark. Nell woke at once. For a moment, she did not know where she was. Then she felt the blanket, smelled tar and rainwater, heard the wheel below, and remembered. She rose, pulled on the almost fitting boots, took the lantern from its hook, and went down to read the gauges before anyone called her name.